Hey guys, welcome to Age of Wonders Planetfall unit unboxing. Today we're going to be unboxing the Amazon Huntress. So the Amazon Huntress is a tier 1 core unit. It's light biological infantry, obviously in the Amazon army. So they have some basic differences than the other tier 1 faction units of this type, such as the Trooper or Indentured, for example, even though they're all ranged cores. I think it's a pretty interesting unit design. It has some less functional damage capability than a couple of the other units, but it's offset a bit by having sort of a support-themed skill set and passive set. Biochemical damage is naturally weak against ethereal units and strong against mineral types. As we'll see once we look at the skills, in most cases the Huntress is very efficient at dealing damage as they are far less likely to miss or graze targets in cover. So let's look at the skills here. So Bio Arrows, the first skill, this is your main damage dealer obviously. It deals 9 biochemical damage, 5 range, 90% accurate, it's repeating, and probably most importantly, it ignores cover accuracy penalties. So this is your main damage dealing ability for the Huntress, and this is really kind of what sets them apart, is how efficiently they can kill units or attack units that are in cover. As we'll see, the 5 range is kind of a limiting factor, but they have this other passive we'll talk about, visual acuity, which makes up for that a little bit. Um, for Flash Arrow, this is 100% accurate, 1 hex AoE, 5 range, single action. It's on a 2-turn cooldown. And although this ability deals no damage, it's a chance to debuff groups of enemies, especially ones without stagger resistance, because you can apply stagger and a blinded effect. Blinded, of course, is minus 40% accuracy, and they can't overwatch. So, as I've said before, I'm a big fan of stagger. Blinded is pretty nice as well. It's useful, I'd say. But being able to do this in a 1-hex AoE is great, and it's a really solid alternative to trading off the damage potential and some of the other functionality, for example, to the grenade. So let's look really quickly. I talked about bio arrows. Let's look at a video, and I'll kind of explain and demonstrate that the penalties not applying to the arrows effect here. So this is just a really early battle, but you see with this Biomancer, they have Fire Bioblaster. This is affected by the standard cover penalties here. We can see it. If you use the control key, you'll see it's 45% chance to hit, 90 minus the 45 from cover. Here we go with bio arrows on the Huntress. You'll notice when we pick a target still in cover, right? Our target's still in cover. We're just not getting that minus 45% penalty. So it just goes to show you, I mean, it makes a huge difference in how much you're actually going to be hitting your targets with those bio arrows. Next up on the skill list here, so Forest Camouflage makes the Huntress invisible when they're on a forest hex. This is in the strategic map, of course. So this is really interesting thematically and kind of from a design perspective, because this is generally something you'd expect to find on like a scout class unit. And I've never really used it. I've never used camouflage as kind of a setup for ambushes or things like that. But it's an interesting skill nonetheless, and I think there are some applications for it. I mentioned earlier the visual acuity passive skill. So this just gives you, it's kind of a game balance thing to offset the shorter range but more accuracy on arrows. So when your Huntress is in cover, they're going to get 1 additional range to abilities. So that'll get you up to 6, which is still a little bit short than this, I'd call it kind of the standard range of 7, which you find on most of these sorts of ranged abilities with guns and so on and so forth. But all in all, it just requires a little more tactics and foresight to not be outranged and outgunned by your enemies. So on the progression path, Huntress gains small amounts to health and accuracy as they progress through the ranks. These benefits aren't really that useful because accuracy is not going to be a problem to begin with, and generally speaking, you're not going to want these units taking a bunch of damage. At prime rank, they get evasive, which is a good skill, but nothing fantastic. Overall, you can use forest camo as a good way to keep these units alive if they get weakened and they're rolling around in armies that you expect to combat. You can always hide them, tuck them away on a forest hex, let them heal, and then rejoin your army later. That's really all I've ever used forest camo for. I've never used it to kind of set up ambushes, like I said a second ago. Tactically speaking, the Huntress is an effective early game unit, gives you efficient way to deal damage to enemies pretty much in the early and through the mid game. They could also play, as I've kind of alluded to, a quasi-support role, having that flash arrow potential, certainly against enemies and armies that lack stagger resistance. Weapons mods are really nice on this unit because they're so accurate at landing hits. I almost always put at least 1 or 2 Huntresses in each group of, or each army group, modded with the acidic composite offensive weapon mod, which destroys 1 armor per hit. And it's just a really cost-effective damage and support application on these units. You really can't beat the value. Also, don't forget, when you pair these up with a Biomancer unit, if you're going to use the Scan Enemy Catalog skill, make sure you use that before you start landing attacks with your Huntress, and you'll get more bang for your buck that way. So, but that's it pretty much for the Huntress. Hope you guys found that useful or helpful. I think it's a cool unit. It's definitely not, in my opinion, it's not the strongest Tier 1 core unit, but it is effective, and especially with mods, it can actually be pretty dangerous. So, fun to play with. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below.